We are back after some minor technical difficulties.
Yuri's having a few difficulties over there, but I just want to bring him back to the joyous moment of the Tez Walker pick with this phenomenal and apropos Ray Lewis quote. No weapon. No weapon, Yuri.
No weapon. That's exactly how I felt. As soon as the pick went out, I said, no weapon. No weapon.
All right, let's pick it up where we were. TJ Tampa's viability at safety.
I think there's a pathway for him to become safety. It might not be right away, because I think that's a bigger transition than some are willing to admit. But I do think that um, his instincts probably could carry over because he's a very good zone corner, and there is a discipline to playing in zone. Maybe you play him more in quarters early on as a quarter safety before you go to cover two. That's an idea, but I do think that there is some versatility there to tap into.
Yeah. Either way, secondary got stronger, and you know my thoughts on secondary. I think it's one of the most important position groups on the field by far. So I guess now we should move on down to, was it Leary? I don't have it. I had it up and I lost it for a second. No, Rasheen Ali, the one cut running back. How do you think he fits the style? I know the big knock on him is ball security. Quite a few fumbles. But anyway, breakdown.
The ball security is a problem, but he is a slasher. I do like his ability to cut in zone, and we really haven't had a running back that can just do a one cut. We have Justice Hill, and Justice Hill, he's a nice player, but I don't think that's his game. So I was very excited by the pick. Obviously, they were very interested in him. They had the top 30 visit. It seems like maybe not the running back I would have went with, but I think he fits well into the Monken offense, and um, he looks a little like DeMarco Murray. It's just weird. I was watching him run. I'm like, that looks a little like DeMarco Murray. And didn't DeMarco Murray have a whole bunch of fumbles throughout his career? You're mute.
I don't necessarily recall Murray being a huge fumble guy. He was a product of the system. Don't pay a running back a second contract guy. He was one of the harbingers of that whole thing. Anyway, honestly, once you get to day 3, especially after you hit 2 home runs in the 4th round, in my view, I could really care less. Just throw some darts. Buy a couple, make 1 million tickets, whatever. Who cares? It was running back. I don't have a whole lot to say. If he can't clean up the ball security, it's going to be an issue, obviously. But I think his one-cut style, he didn't have a timed 40. The scouting reports, when you read them, didn't, talk about him having a 5th or 6th gear necessarily. But then when I watched some clips, he's pulling away from guys. So we'll see. This could be a nice value pick. They needed probably a third guy because Keaton Mitchell's probably going to miss the first half of the season, I would anticipate, or at least the first quarter. So yeah, get 4 good years out of a running back as a part of a committee like a Justice Hill. You don't necessarily need to re-sign him if he's going to. But anyway, fine pick by me. Running back room, I think, is very well equipped to get through the rigors of a 17-game schedule with 3 healthy guys and 1 guy was one of the most explosive players in the entire league last year, maybe the most explosive player, in line to come back at some point. Next pick was Devin Leary, Kentucky quarterback. A lot of people hated this pick, especially people that thought that the Ravens were going to pick 5 offensive linemen in this draft. I wasn't one of those, and I don't have a problem again taking a shot on arm talent. You can't necessarily teach arm talent, but also a guy with a big time turnover problem.
Yeah, I thought Pratt was the better quarterback available if they were going to go that way. So I wasn't a fan of the pick. I just thought it was a very he's a very well, the turnover worthy problem is there, but I just feel like he's a very he's an accurate quarterback, but he's not a developmental guy. He's not someone like you're like, oh, maybe this guy can eventually be worth a trade value. Like this is like Trace McSorley, in my opinion. Like just like an accurate,
Well, he's
but
got an arm strength. McSorley couldn't thread the ball. I mean, Leary, he's inconsistent, but there's flashes of high level play. McSorley was just flashes of C+ play. At least that's how I see it.
yeah, if they were going to go quarterback, the one that I would have gotten behind a little more was Milton, just for the fun of it. If okay, if we're at the time, okay, well,
Wasn't Milton
Milton,
gone though? I thought Milton
yeah, he
was
was
long
gone, he was
gone.
gone, he was gone,
And
he was gone.
even Jordan Travis was gone. So at that point, once Jordan Travis is gone, who as a Florida State fan, I don't think he has an NFL arm. If you can get a prospect afterwards, but I don't disagree with you on Pratt. Pratt. You said right?
Yeah.
That's a good call. Anyway, we don't have to go back and forth too much on that. We'll see if they carry 3 quarterbacks. Apparently, Harbaugh said Josh Johnson still is quarterback 2. Post draft, they carried 3 last year after not, and even 4 last year for like the last 4 games once they picked up Cunningham after carrying 2, I believe, for the at least 3 years, at least 2.5, 3 years, only 2 on the roster. And because they made that rule change where you didn't have to activate the 3rd quarterback, but he could still play if you needed him to. Now they changed the rule again where that guy doesn't even have to be on the 53. He could be on the practice squad, and it's unlimited practice squad elevations. Not you only get 3 per year, then you have to put him on the 53. So we'll see if they carry 2 or 3. And we'll see if Leary, if they try to sneak him on the P squad, maybe he'll get scooped. We'll see. Moving on to the next one is Nick Samak, a Spartan offensive lineman. Yuri.
I thought he was actually. I had him around. And if we're talking strictly value, I had him around the the early like 115 range. I liked him a lot. I didn't talk about it a lot because the Ravens didn't need a center, so I'm like, well, there's no point talking about this guy. But I liked him, and I thought that his fit as a zone blocker, maybe you kick him the guard for the guard competition. But I think there's a real chance that he makes a 53 just off the fact that they carried a backup center last year, Mustafa. But I like him as an athlete in terms of zone blocking. And I think the Ravens, they got a decent, to your point you made earlier about day 3 to throw darts. I think this is a pretty good dart throw in trying to get a starting offensive lineman at some point in his career.
Yeah. Big Ten linemen, they're you can't question the toughness. They're usually pretty strong guys too, and you want to add in some mobility to that, some lateral agility. That sounds like a good combination to me. A good dart throw to make. Whether he's Linderbaum's backup, which they do need a backup to Linderbaum after losing Mustafa, or you can get into the guard mix. They're probably going to carry 10 linemen. So maybe there's a little more competition to the back end of that depth chart, whether that be Big Solid maybe getting pushed off. We'll see. I guess we'll circle back to that after we talk about the final pick, when we talk about the remaining needs. But Sanuse Khan, I'm pronouncing it Kane. I don't know if you want to pronounce it Kane, but I follow soccer, and there's a soccer player with a similar name, and he pronounces it Kane. So safety, box safety. I wanted a rangy safety, but you want to pick a special teams guy with pick 250, God bless John Harbaugh.
Yeah, God bless John Harbaugh. I thought to say about that pick is just God bless John Harbaugh. I thought he was definitely a UDFA grade for me, and I thought that I thought that he was just like just a box, like to your point, just a box safety to fill the gap. I didn't feel like he was anything more than that.
Well, so on that topic, the one UDFA that's making some, garnering some optimism, the most optimism, I guess, is Beau Brade, who you ID'd long, probably months ago when we first were breaking down safeties. And he probably, they got him UDFA, so you want to swap him and pretend that Kane's UDFA, Brade's making it. Any thoughts on Brade or any other UDFAs before we move on?
I think he makes the roster. Yep. He's my UDFA this year that I think makes the roster. I don't know who it did last year. I think last year I did Demas. So I'm gonna stick with the Maryland trend. I didn't know last year was because I didn't know Demas was fried. His knees were fried, but
and Keaton Mitchell. last year UDFAs were Keaton Mitchell and Malik Ham, but he was spent the year on IR.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember who I picked last year. But anyway, yeah, I think he makes the roster. I do like his ability to play split safety. Another one of these heady safety types. I do like his range and his instinct. So I mean, I think there's a good chance that this is maybe not Geno Stone 2.0, but a very some similar lesser version of that. I mean, he's a better run defender than Geno Stone as well, though. I think he's a good player, and I'm surprised that they got him as a UDFA. So I'll plant my flag on that one a little prematurely. Of course, he could get cut tomorrow, and So
no, I mean, okay, so you got one big need to me. At least you need bodies on the depth chart when you leave the draft, and your most notable, ballyhood UDFA happens to play that same position. That's a win, So
yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not going to say that I watched tons of tape from all these UDFA guys. I had a busy spring here, starting a new business venture, but I think we'll see. The Ravens, you got to give them some trust, and they also picked up an edge rusher out of Iowa, who apparently had some freaky testing metrics, but he's kind of that tweener mold. Any thoughts on him?
I did not. I did not get to watch him. He didn't make it into my.
And I'm not. And we should say his name, but I don't have it in front of me. I was reading. I was doing something earlier, and it came across my my sight line. But yeah, edge rusher's kind of crowded. Would it surprise me if a receiver broke out? They don't necessarily have a guy that jumps off the list, but Tylan Wallace could be on the bubble potentially. They're probably going to carry 6 receivers. Other than that, I mean, maybe an inside backer can push Josh Ross off, and then safety. But there's not too many, spots that are available for UDFA's pending injury at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's the roster is mostly set, but in terms of UDFA's making it, I think the only spot that makes logical sense at this moment is safety.
So, nice little segue into remaining needs here. You want to do like a 3-2-1 or
yeah,
let's do a 3-2-1, and you go first.
Yeah, number 3. I'll put receiver on there. I don't think they need it, honestly. If they need it, it needs to be someone of significant talent. I don't think they just need another guy in there, like a Gallup or something. I don't think that really moves the needle for me. I think if they were going to go the receiver route, it would need to be someone of significance. But if they rolled with what they had a receiver, I wouldn't be too mad at it because they are 4 deep there. And I mean that's what they were last year. They're 4 deep.
Yeah, so I'll go with receiver as well. I guess last year you could kind of say they were 5 deep, maybe, because Duvernay was actually did really well the previous year while Bateman was still healthy and he wasn't forced to carry a load. He had some of the best like contested catch metrics and just good hands, and he was making plays. In an ideal world, you're 5 deep at receiver, right? And so I'll also go with receiver as my 3rd, not because I think it's a huge need, but just because I think the roster as a whole is in a pretty good place right now. Could you get an Odell Beckham back for $3 million? That'd probably be like my top dollar on him. Because I do think that they have, adequately bolstered the room with Walker. Could another guy get cut later in the off season? Definitely. There's always, there's usually some marquee receiver movement, and maybe you can find a guy that is ready to take on a complimentary role at this stage and doesn't want. But Michael Thomas to me is not that guy. Slant boy. We don't want slant boy. We want perimeter field stretcher. So number 2, Yuri.
I would say safety. Safety is my number 2 need. All the things we just hit on with Braid potentially make it the roster. They only have 2 currently on the roster that are of. They have 3. They have 3 that have been drafted and are on a contract. Obviously, Braid, makes the team. Then all those things gonna happen. But safety would be my number 2 need. And I'm flipping here to number one real quickly.
Let me give my number two before you give your one.
All right.
So number two for me is going to be offensive guard, and I don't think it's a huge need. I think Josh Jones can maybe get into that mix. I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic on Voorhees. Actually optimistic about Ben Cleveland. I think Ben Cleveland bided his time, waiting behind Kevin Zeitler for 3 years, and now he's going to have that typical fourth-year Ben Powers, Ravens offensive guard in his fourth-year breakout. And he's a big man who is really good in pass protection because he's so hard to get around. And if he can, he's pretty good as a drive blocker. So those two combinations should be pretty good. But I would be fine with adding a guard, just like, add some more depth at receiver, add some more depth on the interior line. And the guy I would like is Dalton Reisner. I liked him coming out. He's had a pretty good career and floated on the radar, but been dependable and solid. If you can coax a good year out of John Simpson that gets him paid, I think you could probably do the same for Dalton, considering he has a better track record before entering Baltimore compared to Simpson.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and that is my number one need is all interior offensive line. I don't think Super Bowls are won on optimism. I think they're won on not having used the word if, and I feel like with offensive guard, if Ben Cleveland steps up and if Voorhees stays healthy for the first time since 2020, then the Ravens are fine, sure. But and Josh Jones. Maybe he provides something, but I think Reisner would be the player that I would be demanding right now. If I was in the front office, I would want him in there to compete. And hey, if Voorhees isn't able to play this year because Reisner beats him out, so be it. He's on a rookie contract, and you picked him in the 7th round. It's not like you picked him in the first or second. So
we got to stop with this coddling draft pick stuff. Make them earn it. The Ravens way is not we picked you early, so you just get, or even we picked you on day 3, so now you're James Proce and you get to try to start.
Right, I know.
We got to stop with that. We got to stop with that. That's not the Ravens way. Iron sharpens iron is the Ravens way. Let's not get it convoluted here now.
Yeah, let the best players play. Play.
And get a good player. If you can get a good player. Derrick Henry was a good player, and they wanted so get a good player at offensive guard, go get a good player at receiver, go get a good player at safety, which is my number one need. And I'm actually in the boat where, considering the players available, the cap space remaining, I'd be pretty excited about a mid-tier or lower mid-range contract for one of these remaining guys, because there are some pretty damn good remaining guys, and you want to talk about how can you make the best impact for the defense going forward, considering the state of the current depth chart. Maybe you get an edge rusher, maybe you can get a Justin Houston or a Bud Dupree or a Carl Lawson, but the outside linebacker depth chart is stocked with some promising guys that you don't necessarily want to lose with cheap labor over the next few years. Safety does not have that, and if you can bring Kyle Hamilton down to play that big nickel, to provide that, presence as a horizontal defender as well as a blitzer, your defense is going to be, hopefully as ferocious as it was last year. And the reason I say that is because there are still some big names. Justin Simmons was, playing at an all-pro level as recently as 2 years ago. Micah Hyde was playing at a Pro Bowl level as recently as 2 years ago. And the guy that I personally have a little bit of a fondness for is Eddie Jackson, former Alabama player. I liked him coming out. He was really good for the Bears. I think he made an all-pro team maybe
Didn't
3
the Ravens
years
have
ago.
Eddie Jackson in on the? Sorry to cut you off. Didn't the Ravens have a visit with Eddie Jackson like a year ago or 2 years ago? Whenever he was a free agent, I swear they had a visit with him.
Honestly, I don't recall that. But if they did, yeah, I don't remember. But one of those 3 guys, if you can get them. If not, you got to bring Daryl Worley back. But I think you could probably do Worley and one of those guys, and just get a guy that can make an impact for a couple $1,000,000 at this point. I think that's a place where you can add an impact player for cheap, and you probably get your best bang for your buck at anywhere. And if the offensive line is still a little bit of a question mark in October, hit the trade deadline. Hit the trade market before the deadline.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Anything else we want to touch on here, boss?
I think that's pretty much it. You want to talk on? I guess we already touched on Oweh. Getting the 5th-year option. He's still outside the top 20 paid. So, and he's still an extended player. How about Bateman though? We didn't talk Bateman. Why don't we wrap on Bateman contract?
Yeah,
I'll go first here, and then you can sound off. I think we heard rumors that there was this collective bargaining agreement, agent not reading it and whatever. Still a really good contract, and I'm not a huge Bateman fan. I know you're not a huge Bateman fan, but if he can't play up to wide receiver 3, that's a bargain for what is it, about $6.5 million a year for each year of the extension. That's cheap, and the Ravens can get out of it if he doesn't perform this year. Like only less than $5 million is guaranteed. Even if he only plays as a wide receiver 3, is a high end wide receiver 3. That's still a bargain. So I like the way it worked out. I always root for the team. I hope every single player has a mistake like this, and the team can get everybody at 25% off their value.
Yeah, in terms of the contract, it was. I mean, it's you pointed it out. I was looking at it. Next year they can cut him, save $5 million, take on $1 million dead cap. So that's it's worth it in my opinion. Even though I may not be the biggest fan of him, I do think that he can play up the better level of the Ravens pass more. But if the Ravens continue to be, bottom 10, bottom 5 in attempts, the pass attempts, I don't think he's going to get the volume that people are expecting. I also want to say, and I think this is ridiculous that I even have to say this, he's not a better receiver than Mark Andrews, and he's not a better receiver than Zay Flowers. And no, he doesn't deserve targets over either of those guys because both of them are better receivers. And you can project all you want, but both of them are better receivers. And I do not. There's a reason why, other than just Lamar hates him or whatever conspiracy theory you want to come up with. There's a reason why Nelson Agholor and Odell Beckham were getting significant volume last year, and it's because they're both pro receivers. And so far to this point, Bateman is still missing a phase in his game as a pro receiver. And I hope he develops it because I want the Ravens to win, and I think a lot of their winning this year is going to come off him being a better receiver. So we'll see.
In his own words, in his own words, he said that the Ravens expected more, and it's his fault for not producing. He took accountability for that yesterday. I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah, I saw.
I don't blame Lamar for Bateman. Bateman's got to earn those targets and build up the chemistry. To me, that's really the key. So yeah.
Yeah, and he dropped the ball against the Steelers game that would have been a momentum swinging touchdown. So I don't blame him for the biggest
worst
game
play of the year
not going his way.
Worst play of the year. I would say that's the worst play they made all year. Well, maybe besides the Lamar pick in the end zone was probably PI unlikely. So yeah, I think I'll stick with that. Worst play of the year.
The worst play of the year was Zay Flowers running the touchdown in against the Chargers when he could have kneed it down. Instead of scoring his second touchdown in his career. Anyways, I think that wraps it there.
Well said. Touche. But I guess we'll do a couple more of these before the big rocket comes to get you.
Yeah, before the rocket comes to get me. So appreciate Manuel. You've been in the chat the whole time. Appreciate you for tuning in. Everybody else, appreciate you for tuning in. Be sure to like the stream. Give us a sub. We're Ravens Way Podcast. We're climbing to the top, and sooner or later we are going to be at the top. But anyways, appreciate everybody for joining. We'll see you guys next time.